Hello, I'm Bill Fitzgerald, CEO of Ziegler Capital Management. More than that, I'm an investment manager and a father. So when I consider the future, particularly beyond my lifetime, I actively engage in doing what I can with what I have to secure a sustainable future for generations to come. To that end, we've created a freestanding YouTube channel, Thick Sustainable Infrastructure Finance, as a quick and accessible tool to facilitate education and discussion about our common global environmental challenges and our specific efforts to rise to the ultimate environmental challenge. Thoughtful consideration over decades has led us to focus on financing thick, sustainable infrastructure. The following excerpt is one that we hope will help to broaden the conversation or clarify a particular dimension of our work. We hope that you will find it to be worth not only your time, but your further consideration as we all navigate these challenging environmental times together. We hope you decide to engage in the discussion by subscribing to the channel and offering your thoughts on specific episodes. We always learn from our colleagues. Thanks for tuning in, and here's our latest special episode.
Welcome to today's episode of Thick Sustainable Infrastructure Finance. I'm Karen Kuby, and today I am joined by two members of our research team, Sarah Vonck and Ankit Dahiya, to discuss the realities of fertilizers, preserving habitats while feeding billions. Hello, Sarah and Ankit. Will you please introduce yourselves and give us a quick snapshot of your backgrounds? Sarah?
Hi, my name is Sarah Vonck. I am currently an MBA student at Quinlan's Business School at Loyola, and I'm working for Ziegler's research team with sustainability.
Thank you. And Ankit?
Hey everyone, my name is Ankit Dahiya. I'm a senior at Beloit College, and I'm working as a sustainability analyst intern with the Ziegler Capital Management since summer of 2022.
Wonderful. All right, well, thanks for joining us today. So here we go. Sarah, can you share with us how fertilizers became an area of focus for the research team? And then just launch us right into what you found.
Yeah, totally. So we were really getting together and talking about the really complicated equation that we encounter meeting the nation and the world's needs and the different industries and areas that presents, everything from energy generation to food production, which is how we landed on fertilizers in particular. That's what we're encountering time and time again as we're exploring the future of infrastructure demands. And because of that, we did just opt to dig in a little bit further into chemical fertilizers in particular, kind of the conversations around whether or not we actually need them, and then the optimal and aspirational opinions of how we can actually expect or what we should expect companies to do to ensure to preserve our habitat needs and water needs. We were particularly intrigued by the actual impacts that they take and have on habitat and how those could be addressed. And to kind of work through that conversation, Ankit and I both researched the kind of pros and cons of fertilizers and wanted to have a conversation for a couple minutes and just discuss what we found. And so Ankit, I'll start by asking you, just through looking into regenerative farming and the potential of actually eliminating fertilizer use, I'd like to hear a little bit more about what you found and what you found most compelling.
Sure. So fertilizers, many of which were developed in the lab and are petroleum-based, have allowed farmers and gardeners of every strip to exercise greater control over the plants. They want to grow by enriching the immediate environment and warning of the pest. But such benefits haven't come without environmental costs, and namely the wholesale pollutions of our streams, river, ponds, lakes, and even coastal areas. As this synthetic chemical runs off into the nearby waterways, fertilizers are awful for our habitat. Soil is degrading, water is being polluted, and realistically, we don't even need fertilizers. So why, based on what you found, do you think we use them so heavily?
Yeah, that's a really great question. And I actually found a lot of really fascinating studies about our dependence as a society on fertilizers that I wasn't totally expecting. We're including a slide here that actually shows that population of which that scientists project depend or actually need chemical fertilizers for their livelihoods to be sustained. Since the Haber-Bosch process was created, that's kind of what led to the booming population, and anywhere from like 30% to every one of two people actually depend on plants that were grown or created with chemical fertilizers to kind of sustain their day to day. So in the end, like our population kind of demands it, whether that be to use the current land that we have for agriculture or to make sure that we can optimize the land that we have and not have to destroy more natural land for agricultural use. But while I was doing that research and kind of digging more into this, I did see, of course, a lot of the impacts regarding soil and soil degradation. So I would be intrigued to hear a little bit more from you about soil degradation, how fertilizers play a part of that, or anything else that kind of has to do with the land that you might have found.
Yeah, sure. So soil carries out an important ecological service for the survival of life. And soil health management is vital for the maintenance of biodiversity, safeguarding the sustainable agriculture production. So retaining and preserving soil health has primary importance for the ecosystem sustainability. And health of the soil is regulated by soil properties, that is the biological properties, and the modern agriculture is largely dependent on fertilizers. The overuse of the chemical fertilizer can contribute to soil acidification and soil crust, thereby reducing the content of the organic matter, human content, beneficial species, stunning plant growth, altering the pH level of the soil, growing pests, and even leading to the release of the greenhouse gases. Nevertheless, fertilizers continue to be vital tool for worldwide food safety. When sustainable agriculture is the global target, the troublesome effect of the chemical fertilizer cannot be ignored. So, Sarah, while doing some research, did you encounter anything about whether or not fertilizers can be used sustainably with soil?
Yeah. And of course that's everything like in any industry can be a little bit complicated. But there are, when it comes to agriculture, like a lot of different factors that lead to soil depletion. And when fertilizers actually applied and used properly, cannot be a huge part of that, or they can kind of lessen the soil depletion that we do see in a lot of parts of the world. Because in the end, fertilizers do restore a lot of those nutrients that we actually need on our farmlands. It's just when it's misused or overused or applied poorly, I've been encountering that we see some of the drastic impacts that we can see, here in the US, but then also all around the world. And I do think like widespread use of fertilizers has actually allowed us to maintain the scale of our existing farmlands without, as I kind of already mentioned, needing to convert additional habitats to achieve our food demand needs. So I definitely think it's kind of a conversation of how we can better utilize fertilizers, or even the kind of development of new technology systems or frameworks that can ensure that they're being used well, efficiently, effectively, and even ethically, I think. So that's kind of what I think when it comes to the overuse and soil depletion. And then, of course, while on that topic in particular, and something I was finding a lot when it came to overuse of fertilizers, is general runoff and the impacts that fertilizer can have on water. What did you find most pressing regarding water as a source of natural capital, and how fertilizer impacts that?
Yeah. So, rainfall, snowfall, and irrigation are the reason why fertilizers make its way to the nearby water bodies. Chemical fertilizer contain phosphate and nitrates that can be the main reason behind water pollution. Environmental nitrogen and phosphorus contribute to the process of eutrophication, which enrich the water surface with nutrients. The trophic status of the lakes is associated with the nutrients and growth of organic matter in the lake. The effect of eutrophication is that there is an abundance of algal bloom, all of which can be significantly impact on the habitat in addition to water.
Yeah, that makes sense. I feel like I found some content about impacts on water and coastal water especially. And I feel like there are some solutions and conversations happening about how we can avoid this, but the impacts really just do seem so considerable. And I wish that there were more conversations when it comes to companies and producers and sellers of fertilizers and ammonia products. I wish they would kind of take that better into account better and do better investments into research and development to actually find alternatives for these potentially harmful and regularly harmful products. Additionally, I think if there was just better education or better partnerships with farmers, I know I feel like hear about this a lot, but I do think there's potential there as well to kind of minimize at least the overuse that I feel like can lead to some of those problems with like impacted water quality or eutrophication or algal blooms or anything of the sort. Anyways, given what we talked about, like what would you say is achievable or aspirational or even like optimal for some of these companies or even fertilizer use in general?
So to your point, we will likely need some kind of fertilizers to maintain the efficiency and the scale required for the future. We didn't talk about it here, but we are growing enough food to feed the world presently. So I would really like to see if it's better allocated to ensure that we meet the world's need without overusing and increasing the likelihood of environmental impact. From there, I think the optimal would be to see the companies start investing into better alternatives to nitrogen fertilizers. Lastly, the aspirational would be somehow either the entire elimination of the use, creating an alternative, or finding a way to better manage it. I believe the aspiration would be eliminating nitrogen fertilizers entirely. What about you?
Yeah, I do agree with you. And the cool thing is that I actually did find, and we talked a little bit about some of those startups that are trying to do just that. So I know there are efforts from some companies to use microbes as alternatives for a lot of chemicals used in the agricultural process. Of course, it's not really at the point right now that it's able to compete with actual nitrogen fertilizers, but there is a lot of potential. And I know that we had the opportunity to chat about some of these companies, Ankit. So do you want to share a little bit about some of the folks we found and what we kind of see for the future?
Yeah, some startups include Join Bio and Pivot Bio, which have gotten support from Bayer and Monsanto respectively. It appears the large companies are aware of the need to innovate and are investing companies to help just to do that.
Could I ask a question of you two at this point? A couple questions.
Totally.
Okay. So I'm curious about, as with energy production, there are government tax exemptions and things like that, incentives to increase the pace of progress. Did you see anything like that in terms of farming or agriculture in general, and specifically with like the use of fertilizers and trying to have a goal of reducing the amount of nitrates used in them or getting rid of them altogether?
Yeah, I can go first. I personally didn't find much. I was trying to look at different political or even like policy initiatives that were aimed at kind of limiting fertilizers, or at minimum trying to ensure that the production of them or application of them were being done efficiently and effectively. But I did not find much. But Ankit, I'd love to hear if you saw or read anything, because I know we talked about this a lot towards the start of our research.
Yeah, sure. So based on my research, I find some of the countries, especially in South Asia, they hold together ban the use of fertilizers, which negatively impacted the crop production at large. So a prime example that we find was Sri Lanka, and Sri Lanka was a key producer of rice and tea, and they were actually the exporter of it. And by banning the fertilizers overnight, from being an exporter of rice, they became an importer of rice as the production fell by 25%. So having drastic steps to reduce the use can negatively impact your production. So I believe governments need to find like a way through which they can sustainably transit to more sustainable use of those fertilizers.
Oh, that's interesting. So one more question. Have you guys, do you have plans to research other agricultural, practices and other things that can be adjusted? I know I've heard of tilling being not the greatest thing and diversity of crops and things like that. Do you have plans to continue to dig into this agriculture theme more broadly?
Yeah, so I can start there because I'm actually doing that right now. These conversations around fertilizer production and use kind of led to the conversation of one, all of the other negative impacts that certain agricultural practices can have on our habitat, but then two, what companies are currently doing or kind of where in the value chain companies can make adjustments to limit those negative impacts. So we actually landed on and kind of like the agriculture equipment manufacturing space. So I'm looking into John Deere right now, and I'm actually finding a lot of pretty fascinating innovations that they're working on and towards to kind of best apply fertilizers, excuse me, best apply fertilizers, best approaches to even like watering crops to minimize water waste, optimal tilling. I've seen less on crop rotation at this current point, but I've only kind of just started this report and the research into the work that they're doing, and we'll hopefully have more information this coming week.
Okay. And is there a document or some sort of report that you guys are putting together that we can ultimately look at and kind of see, what you think about Monsanto's activities and now the merger, how that might impact things and where we can kind of keep an eye on things to see how progress is being made in the space where fertilizers in particular are being applied?
Yeah, I don't think we currently have a plan to put together a report, but we've had discussions around how we can do best to kind of keep tabs on different industries as we continue to kind of build out our sustainable investment options. Mm-hmm. And so we can definitely have a conversation about creating one that folks can reference, especially as we continue to build out our research and different opportunities.
That'd be great. Okay, well, thank you both for this information. I guess in the end, there are some hopeful short-term and longer-term initiatives that we can, hope to help and infuse into the thinking, at least, if not actually make an impact on directly. It does seem like government has some room to do a little work as well to incentivize and think carefully about the shorter and longer term impacts of any adjustments they may make. So I'll look forward to hearing more about this as you guys continue to look into it, both with regard to fertilizers in specific and on the more broad topic of agriculture. So thanks again for your time and all your work. So that's it for today's episode. Stay tuned for more examples of thick, sustainable infrastructure. We are always working to find out which opportunities out there actually help us meet the challenge as we move forward. And if you haven't subscribed to our channel yet, please do so. There's always more information to be had, and we always learn from our colleagues. So please let us know what you think. Any comments and thoughts are very welcome, and we will respond. So thanks again, you guys. We'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.